session is lectured by Professor SL Sriram. Thank you, Mr. Sriram, for coming over. It is on regulatory landscape and challenges in India and LMICs. I request Dr. Tony Raj, Dean of SJRI, to introduce Mr. Sriram.
Morning, everyone. Welcome back to the session. We're privileged to have Mr. Sriram accept talk at this at our PORTENT annual meeting. Just to give you a background of Mr. Sriram's expertise, he's a quality management system and regulatory implementation consultant for software as a medical device, as well as for in vitro diagnostic medical devices, and he's based in Bangalore. Mr. Sriram is currently the Director of MeDStrategist Innovations, bringing in over four decades of extensive industry experience in quality management system implementation, regulatory filing, in medical device strategy. He's the former head of design, development, and quality at BPL Medical Technologies, which is a very large med tech company based out of Bangalore, with deep expertise in technical services in product localization. And I'm sure this talk is going to be very useful for startups and for all of us who are working in the medical device space. So thank you so much, Mr. Sriram, and thank you for accepting.
Good morning, all of you. Thank you, Dr. Tony. I would like to add a little more to that from the perspective of what I have done in the past, particularly for the medical device industry. As I said, I come from medical device industry with over 4 decades, 46 years in the medical device industry. Having worked in different organizations, small, big, multinational organizations like GE Medical Systems and Shimadzu, Hitachi, Picker, and finally I got retired in 2017 from my services in BPL as the Head of Design and Development and Quality and Regulatory for BPL Medical Technologies. And after that, I've been pursuing mainly the consultancy to enable the organizations, particularly startups, as a give back to the industry, which is nourished me, to educate, make them prepared for the black box of regulations, which most of the people are afraid of, and enable them to overcome those concept of black box, and then introduce the products into the market for the benefit of the people in the society. That's been the main objective. In that process, in the last 8 years, I have provided services to close to about 28 different organizations, and 63 devices have been approved by my help to these organizations. The topic that is given today is the regulatory landscape challenge and challenges for medical devices in LMIC. I have prepared it in such a way that it gives a glimpse of what is regulation in LMIC right now, how it evolved, and what are the aspects to it. We may not be able to go very in-depth into the regulatory aspect of it because it's a huge subject on its own. Say, for example, it has got both quality management system and regulation put together as to work in sync with each other. And I give a training program on quality management system for 4 days. So it will be very difficult to bring all of them within the span of about 1 year. So I'll try my best. But you can ask me any questions that you need, and I will be available to help you with the answers that I believe. Okay. Why medical device regulation, particularly the LMIC in India? There was a accident that took place where 52 cataract operations performed in my hospital, 50 patients lost their vision, mainly because one of the autoclave that they used was not working correctly, which put a lot of emphasis in terms of in the country for getting into the regulation where you will be able to control all the devices that are there coming into the country so that they are at par with the international requirement as well as it meets the safety and performance of the patients particularly. There are a metrovigilance program of India, MUPA was started for medical devices. Medical devices mainly the unsung hero of the healthcare sector. The primary objective is to ensure their safety, quality, accessibility, and it faces unique regulatory challenges. We'll go into that. Why do we need regulation? Patient safety and public health are the primary reason for regulation. Ensuring efficacy and quality of devices. Quality. What is quality? Quality is basically what you think that the product should do, it does. That is what is quality. The definition of quality is the characteristics. The product fulfills the characteristics identified that it should have. That is what quality is all about. That's the definition of quality. So, with the efficacy, it should meet the quality of the devices. So, we need to define what the product quality should be. That is left to the organization who is going to design and manufacture the products. The very important aspect, particularly in the LMIC, is the influx of substandard and counterfeit products coming into the country and are being manufactured in the country, going to the patients, which is detrimental to the patient health and public health at large. Also, it should be able to facilitate access to appropriate and adaptive, affordable, adaptive technologies. The new technologies that are coming up, the regulation should be in a position that we should be able to facilitate the organizations to enable those technologies to be incorporated into the products and into the country. Another very important aspect is the local innovation and manufacturing, local manufacturing. If you don't have regulation in India, till the time I will go into the history of the regulation in India, the dependence on the import had been very high. It has drastically come down after the regulation was proposed. It has also been the experience of the drugs and medicines. The moment the regulation kicked into the medicines, the drugs, the quality of drugs and the manufacturing in India went up, and we are one of the leading suppliers of drugs in the world. India. That's because the regulation came into the picture. So one of the very important objectives of the bringing in regulation into the medical device, foreign medical device of India and to the LMIC is to promote innovation locally and as well as local manufacturing. I just put some of the countries, many of them have regulations in place. Some of the LMIC countries do not have regulation. I will go into the details. What kind of system is it? Before we go into this thing, there needs to be a very clear understanding of the definition of some of the terms that is going to be used. What is a medical device? What do you mean by medical device? Any instrument, any apparatus, implement, machine, apply, we can call it anyway, implant, in vitro reagent, even a reagent, a liquid, or calibrator, use software alone, material or similar other related article that is intended by the manufacturer. The key words here is intended by its manufacturer to be used either alone or in combination for humans. If it is going to be used for animals, it is not a medical device, it's a veterinary device. For what purpose? It lists many of the aspects of it. Diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, treatment, or alleviation of any disease. Diagnosis of disease, prevention of a disease, monitoring of a disease, treatment of a disease, or alleviation of disease. What? Diagnosis, replacement, modification, support of the anatomy or physiological process. It has got two portions to it, anatomy and physiological process. So we can go into the detail like this. Diagnosis of anatomy or replacement of anatomy, modification of anatomy or support of the anatomy, or diagnosis of physiological process, replacement of physiological process, modification of physiological process, or support of the physiological process. Supporting or sustaining life, control of consumption, disinfection of medical device. Autoclave, it's a medical device. The autoclave will disinfect a medical device. That becomes also a medical device. Okay. Then the last one comes the IVD, in vitro diagnostics, providing information. An IVD device provides information. That's what it is. It does. For medical or diagnostic purposes, by means of in vitro examination of specimens derived from the human body. In vitro is outside the body. You take a tissue or material from the body, human body, do an analysis outside the body, and then give information about that tissue or material, then it's an IVD device, it's also a medical device. Provided it does not achieve its primary intended function through pharmacological, immunological, or metabolic means, then it becomes a different type of this thing. It will become a medicine, it will become a drug, or so this is the definition of medical device. So whoever is getting into the medical device, we need to very clearly understand what is it, and also the intended use, what the manufacturer claimed that the product will do. Intended by its manufacturer. When the definition of intended use also here. Say, for example, a wearable device. A wearable device, if the manufacturer says, do not take this, it's only giving you information, but you have to go and check to the doctor, and he will do a diagnosis, okay, then it cannot be termed as a medical device. If the wearable device person, the manufacturer says that he claims, if he claims that the information that is provided by that machine, by that instrument, can be taken as a diagnosis, he has to declare. Then only it becomes qualified as a medical device. Who is a manufacturer? The definition of manufacturer is on whose name the product is going to be sold in the market, placed in the market, irrespective whether he is actually manufacturing or designing the product. The product is going to be sold in a particular company's name or a person's name, then he is the manufacturer. What is post-market surveillance? Systematic process to collect and analyze gained experience gained from medical devices that have been placed in the market. This is after the product has been placed in the market. They're supposed to do an analysis, get information, and do an analysis. It's called post-market surveillance. Because I'll be using such terms while we're going through this. Authorized representative. If an organization which is there in US and they want to get a regulation done in India, they have to appoint an authorized representative in India who has received a written mandate from the manufacturer to act on his behalf for specific tasks. There has to be an agreement between them, and then only that authorized representative can apply for regulatory approvals in India or in any of the LMICs. Authorized clinical evaluation, which you all know. Many of you know. Analysis, assessment and analysis of clinical data pertaining to medical device to verify the clinical safety and performance of the device when used in the intended by the manufacturer, as it is intended by the manufacturer. Okay. I don't want to bore you with much of the definitions, because these definitions are very important. You need to understand what is the medical device, who is the manufacturer, authorized operating, intended use, all of that. history of quality systems. In ancient times, there had been quality of what they did. In many of the Asian cultures, say, for example, in India, we had the Indus Valley Saraswati civilization, where the bricks that were exactly, all the bricks were exactly the same size. They had a jewelry made of shells, which is only 5-meter diameter, 5 mm diameter of about 10 centimeter length, and they would have drilled a hole within that 1 mm hole. They were drilled along that, which is a brittle material. They were able to do that. So they had quality systems and regulations already in place. We do not know how it was controlled, but we have an example of that. These are all being done. Take, for example, Babylonian, okay? The Egyptian civilization, Chinese civilization. We have numerous data that is available that those in those times there had been a good quality and regulatory framework that had been in place. But coming to the modern times, particularly during the industrial revolution, mass production, when it started, inspection and removal of defective products came into being. That was the start of a quality revolution that happened with the industrial revolution. Go back in from 1760 to 1840, it matured, and there was a very clear system that we developed at the point of time. The principles of scientific management of products in statistical quality control started before in World War II, 1911, by Taylor. This became the foundational stone of statistical quality control for identifying how to identify different products in a large-scale manufacturing. The Chovat PDCA cycle he created along with Deming also. PDCA is the only thing that you need to do, you need to apply, do ask for plan, check whether you're meeting the objectives, and based on that act. It's called PDCA cycle. It's a very well-known methodology which is used in all quality management systems for all types of products and all types of processes. It was started by Shivat. Then Deming came along. He also collaborated with Shivat. The total quality management system is developed, which is a unique methodology which was primarily implemented in Japan. The Japanese quality revolution took place in the 60s and 70s, and they became the world leaders in the quality products. Say, for example, I worked in GE. Okay, I was the product manager for CT scan. I was responsible for CT scan business in India and Southeast Asia. And the GE Medical Systems had a manufacturing unit in US and also Japan. Both manufacturing units were making different CT scan, different models of CT scans. The product that was coming from Japan was excellent quality in terms of reliability. For years, there would not be any failure at all. Whereas the US product will be a very high-tech product that will have very frequent trouble and defects. You need to keep attending to that. That was the kind of methodology there. High technology, everything from US, but very high reliability from Japan. That was because of the Deming's effort that he turned the industrial revolution of Japan into very high quality, reliable types. In 1987, ISO 9001 quality management system was developed, which is a quality management system standard developed by International Organization for Standard, and which became the backbone for quality management systems across the industry. ISO 9001 is applicable for any type of organization. It can be for a hospital. It can be for the corner tea shop. It can be for GE. It can be for a temple. The temple in Bangalore is ISO 9001. Then for medical devices, a specific quality management system was introduced, which is from 1996. It is ISO 13485. With this, the history of quality systems evolved, and we are in the age of ISO 13485 for medical devices. History of regulations. It has evolved significantly over time, with history marked responses to crises. From the 19th century, law focused on mainly on poisons restricted to cook side. Before that, there was no regulations at all. Then Pure Food and Drug Act, in the early 20th century, mainly driven by adulterated and misbranded products. Control that. It came up. FDC Act came into being in 1938 in US. Pre-market safety testing for drugs became mandatory. Then Costa-Harris Amendment triggered by thalidomide tragedy. It is a very absolute terrible tragedy. Regulation started in the US. US has been leading, particularly in the regulatory aspect of it, and then fought over by Europe. Duncan Shield, the incident of the condom, condom type shield incident spurred post-market reporting where the product has been in the market, what are the kind of response that the product has been receiving, and what are the defects that the product had, and how it affected the patients. That's where the post-market surveillance started. Then in 1992, an organization which was formed is called Global Harmonization Task Force. It was established. We'll talk about that. So over time, regulation expanded to encompass medical devices, cosmetic, and other products, with increasing emphasis on pre-market approval before the product is marketed into the market, go to the patients and users. It has got to get approval. And after that, post-market surveillance, where after the product goes into the market, we need to keep monitoring how the product performs. Coming to common characteristics and challenges in LMIC, limited regulatory capacity, the lack of skilled manpower, both in manpower in the industry, and as well as regulatory authority, particularly for review of inspectors, insufficient funding and infrastructure, inadequate enforcement mechanisms have been there. Dependence on imports, very high dependence on imports. Post-market surveillance become a big problem because of that, addressing issues with foreign. They will not be able to understand the requirement for different countries and then meeting them in those products because it is being imported by the country. Ethical considerations. Okay, there have been a lot of clinical trials which have not been performed with the proper ethics that needs to go into the clinical trials, and as well as in terms of digital health, the product that is being sold, the spurious product, fraudulent products have been there, still there. Okay. Affordability and access. Regulations is going to bring in a lot of expenses to the organization. It's a huge drain in the funding, drain in the resources, particularly financial resources. Limited availability of essential devices and services. There has not been a very good legal framework. Challenges in post-market surveillance, innovation versus regulation. Balancing the innovation and regulation had been the biggest challenge, even now it is the biggest challenge. And lack of harmonization across different countries. These have been some of the challenges which have been taken over by GHD. GSTF, and they were trying to understand. Okay? GSTF is called Global Harmonization Task Force. Spearhead development of regulatory framework for all countries. By the time of 90s, Europe and the US, Japan, Australia, and to some extent Brazil already had implemented certain regulations. So FDA, okay, in Europe, the MDD and ABDC, they 9340 EC of European Union, which is the directives. Only in 2017, they came up with the medical device regulation and the administrative regulation in Europe. This put other countries on a disadvantageous situation when trading with medical devices within their own country. Not only in the other countries, it put them in a disadvantaged situation. So there was a representation by many of the countries through WHO and WTO for GSTF to take up and to create a framework for medical devices regulation adaptable by all countries, including low and middle income countries. They developed it, and in 2011, all the documents, everything was published. Complete framework was created for all the countries to follow, and the WHO signatories and WTO signatories adopted them. And there have been many countries have implemented them. I will go into them. And the GSTF, after it is this time, GSTF no longer exists because their job is done, and it was taken over by another organization called IMDRF, International Medical Device Regulatory Forum, Regulators Forum. All the regulators of all the countries have filed to form a forum. There have been a lot of exchanges of ideas, exchange of information takes place between them, and collaboration has been there. Now, what is this regulatory framework developed by GSTF? What are they going to tell? What are these components? I'm giving here only few of them. There are very high-level aspects of it. I may not be able to go in detail into each of them, but we can discuss if you have any questions. Quality management system. Any organization which is dealing with medical device, they need to have, it's mandatory that they need to have quality management system in place. The quality management system is ISO 13485. It is for all processes of the organization. It is not for the product, it is for the processes deployed in an organization. Design, human resources, infrastructure management, top management, manufacturing, quality control, marketing, sales, customer support, stores, all these functions, they need to have a processes in place in alignment with ISO 13485, mandatory for all type of organization, whether you're going to manufacture, design, or only distribute, or only do service. There could be an organization which does only customer support. For all of them, ISO 13485 is mandatory. But basically, regulation is for products to get into it. So the products are classified based on the risk that the product poses to the patient. Generally, it is taken for patient, the risk that it poses to the patient, and also for the user and the bystanders. The doctor is using it. The product should not harm the doctor too, not only the patient, doctor also a clinician or a technician, and also the people who are around him when it is being used, and also the environment. All these are considered. Based on that, the classification of the products have been identified as Class A, B, C, D. Most of the countries have classified the product accordingly, A, B, C, D. Also, it can be used like 1, 2, 3, 4. Say, for example, in Brazil, they use it as Class 1, Class 2, Class 4. US and Europe slightly different. US has got only class 1, class 2, class 3. And Europe, they have class 1, 2A, 2B, and class 3. But primarily the classification in terms of the product will always match. Okay? A class C device in India will be a class 2B device in Europe. That's how it will be. Process standards and product standards have to be deployed for the product. When you say standards, there are international standards identified for different processes that you're going to do for your product. Say, for example, you have a product which has got a software in it. That product has to be designed. The software has to follow IEC 62304 SDLC, Software Development Lifecycle. Mandatory. If a product has got, is an active medical device, and if a product has got knobs and menus and connectors and everything, it has to, for the design of those features of the product, need to follow another standard called IEC 62366. It's a process standard. It's called usability engineering standard. They need to follow. These are process standards. As well as for all products, you need to deploy the risk assessment, risk management for the product. What are the challenge, how the product is going to affect, what are the harms, hazards that it is going to pose to the patient, to the user, to the environment, to the bystanders. You need to identify. Okay? For that, there is another process standard, ISO 1497. All these standards have got only numbers, okay? So, risk management standard. These are process standards. Apart from that, for every product, not every product, for most of the products, there are particular standards for the product. Suppose you are doing ECG. Any ECG measuring product needs to comply to one particular standard with IEC 661-2-24. If it is going to be a CT scan, it has to comply to the standard defined for CT scan, IEC 661-2-47. There are close to about published, there are close to about 350 odd standards for different techniques. If you have a product which has gone into sterilization, within the sterilization, there are close to about 18 different standards out there. Your product has to meet those standards. This is defined in the regulations. Then you need to do clinical trial or evaluation. If it's an IVD device, it's called performance evaluation. If it's a medical device, it's called clinical evaluation, clinical trial, clinical data. You need to do it in a particular methodology that is defined in the regulation. Regulation defines how it has to be done. What kind of organization that you need to give your product to do clinical evaluation, what should be the qualification of these people, how many patients that you need to do clinical trial, what are the statistics behind it, what are the kind of data that you need to get. There are different regulations which demand for certain type with the classification of the products. Mandatorily, you need to do clinical evaluation, clinical trial. For some of the classifications, you may not do the clinical trial, but we have to do clinical evaluation. You can prove that your product is substantially equivalent to another product which is already there in the market. It's called substantial equivalence methodology. Through that, you can prove that your product is equivalent to that product in terms of design, in terms of intended use, in terms of the features and all of them. So that product has already been certified, regulatory approval it is obtained. So you don't have to do clinical trial per se, but you do prove that your product is substantially equivalent, and then go ahead and get a lot of literature data, survey and all of them, prove that that product will survive, there will be no issues, all the issues have been taken care. If there is an issue, maybe clinical literature that proves that there are issues that have been in the market, that you're addressing them in your product, like that you need to prove in the clinical evaluation. Then the product needs to have very clear identification and traceability. How the product will be manufactured, what are the components that goes into the product, this component purchased from whom, what are the batch of the device, all of them have to be there, which is the identification and traceability. There is something called UDIDA, we'll talk about it. Then we have the confirmatory assessment routes that we need to take. What kind of methodology you're going to do for confirmatory assessment for the product with the regulatory authority. Okay. Then the regulatory authority will come and do an audit and give the approval. And after that, you need to do post-market surveillance. How to do post-market surveillance? There could be a product recall we may have to do. What is the recall methodology you're going to have? What is the advisory notice? Is there any serious incident that has happened with your product? Then how are you going to handle all of them? Have to be defined. Okay. So with that, GSTF came up with the two methodology. One is called single phase full implementation of all this in a country, or it could be on a two-phase registration. One is registration and then the full assessment. Two-phase methodology. This is what ISO 13485 quality management system talks about. It has got about 8 clauses, 8 big clauses: scope, normative reference, term, and all of them. Then what are the things that are under the scope, or how human resources in your organizations are managed. Competence of people who are involved in product realization. What are the competency of the design engineer? What are the competency of the manufacturer? What is the competency of the quality control person? All that have to be very clearly defined and controlled in an organization. So like that, design and development. There is a very clear path for design and development. Okay. I was hearing last doing this thing that you have designed, then you want to go for regulation in India. No, it doesn't work like that. You should have designed it, the product, in ISO 13485 framework, wherever you have. Or else you need to prove that you have designed in that particular fashion. You design it in US, okay, without any deployment of ISO 13485 process for design, and then you want to bring the product to India and do a regulation. Sorry, no, not acceptable. Okay. You should prove that the product has been designed as per ISO 13485 framework. The process that is designed there. So all these aspects of the organization are covered under 13485. And 13485 is the global standard accepted by all countries in the world, including Europe, US. Even though US, there is in FTA, there is one particular this thing called 21 CFR 820, okay, which gives the QSR, quality system regulation, which is exactly now in alignment with ISO 134. Okay. So you have regulatory and quality management system, both are in tandem. And we have regulatory primary focus on design, manufacturing, all of them introduced, very highly process driven for all of them. Standards have to be applied, directives and rules of different regulation, which is country specific, have to be applied. The quality management system is a complete procedures we need to have, documentation record to prove that we have followed all those processes. There are mandatory processes, there are necessary processes, and optional processes. And there are standards, which is general and particular. All of them have to be combined. For all of them, there is one very interlinked thing is the risk management. The whole product design at the concept stage, before you get into the design of the product, you need to start the risk management. With all of them, you need to have customer focus. Never ever get away from the customer focus, the patient focus, the user focus. Indian regulation. We'll get into Indian regulation now. Okay, GSTF gave options, single phase or two phase. India confirmed implementation in 2015 and introduced the regulation Indian Medical Device Rule in 2017. The organization which is responsible for doing that is called CDSCO, which is Central Drug Standards Control Organization, which had been doing for medicines, drugs, and cosmetics. Within the same Drugs and Cosmetic Act of 1940, it was introduced. Okay? And because the CDSCO was primarily a drug-related and cosmetic thing, we have been facing a lot of issues because the competency of the people in the organization have not been very good. So there is this has been communicated to the government, and they are carving out the medical device from CDSCO. Hopefully by 2026, we will have one medical device authority with full competency for medical devices. Okay. How does it happen? Well, how does the regulation process happen in India? If it is going to be a manufacturing, this slide is for manufacturing. If an organization is there in India, which is into manufacturing, they need to establish ISO 13485 first. When I say manufacturer, the product on whose name the product is going to be sold, he is the manufacturer. And he has to register the organization with the CDSCO, classify the product accordingly, and apply all applicable standards, design and develop the product, verify the products meet all the requirements, then apply what is called the test license. They have to apply for test license, in which they have to say that we want to manufacture initially, say about 10 of this particular product, and we will take those 10 products to a clinical trial. After the clinical trial, okay, they will have to apply for, once you apply for it, you'll get the test license. Only after the test license, you can go ahead and do clinical trial. Before that, you're not supposed to do clinical trial. You have to get the test license. After you've done the clinical trial, you have all the data, you've done the clinical evaluation, everything, then a complete technical documentation submission is made. And based on that, manufacturing license will be given, then only you can start manufacturing. Till then, you are not supposed to manufacture the product in India and then distribute and follow the. This is the flow for manufacturing. If it is going to be importing and trading, an authorized representative in India of the manufacturer has to register. And he needs to prove that he is the authorized representative. There is an agreement with all the clauses identified in the regulation that have it from the manufacturer. Okay. If it is a product already manufactured in US, EU, Japan, Canada, Australia, then apply for import license with certain applications, certain data, particularly called free sale certificate. That you have to get it from US or EU, whichever country that was manufactured. They have to get the free sale certificate. An import license will be given. After that, they can start importing, distribute, and do post-market services. This is the responsibility of the authorized representative. If the product is not manufactured in these countries, say if it is from China or any other country, okay, if it is two different types, one is Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D, for import license, the FSC, and clinical trial and evaluation report. Okay. We can go ahead and do without the clinical trial. I'm sorry, there was a mistake there with FSC. And clinical trial evaluation report that has been done in those countries can be applied with the technical documentation. You can go ahead and get the import license. If it is a Class C or D product, then you have to apply for test license. You have to perform clinical trial in India and prove that the product is safe. It has to be done in India. and then do a clinical technical documentation submission, and after that you will get the input results. This is the methodology that we use for. What are the test license requirements and manufacturing license requirements are given here. ISO 13485 certificate is mandatory. Intended use of the product, description of the product, clinical trial ethics committee. You need to have an agreement with the organization for doing the clinical trial, justification of the quality of the quantity of products that you're going to do manufacture for the test license. Okay. All this need to be submitted. Manufacturing license, the whole gamut of this thing. There is two big documents called plant master file and device master file. They have to be compiled and submitted. Okay. And for class A and B, the state where the authorized representative is present, he can apply to the state office of the CDSCO. They can get the license. If it is class C and D, only central government organizations will be providing the license. South Africa. I'm just touching upon different countries because my topic was given to me for LMIC. Okay. In South Africa, they are going through these two phases. Okay. Not the single phase like in India. By the way, Indian regulation is a very robust regulation, almost equivalent to European regulation. European regulation is much, much better or stronger than US FDA. Okay? Much stronger than US FDA, European regulation. And Indian regulation is almost equivalent, very close to European regulation. We have problem particularly because of the organization, which is the regulatory authority, and complacency, and those are the things that are there within the country. That's why it's been a problem. Otherwise, it's fantastic regulation that has been there. And South Africa has only gone ahead for registration, okay, and for import license, if it is from US, EU, Brazil, Japan, or Australia, okay, we can directly go ahead and supply those products into register the product and then supply. For manufacturing license, the manufacturer in South Africa have to get any of those countries' regulatory approval, then only they can sell it in South Africa. That's the game that they have. Because the local manufacturing is very negligible in South Africa. More 95% of the product are imported there. ASEAN countries. ASEAN countries has a very good, robust regulatory framework that has been introduced in 2015, just 2 years before India. It is exactly similar to Indian regulation, exactly the GSTF recommendation they have followed. All these countries like Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, all signatory to that. They all have their own regulatory authority, follow the ASEAN regulatory framework. Okay. All international standards applicable, registration with the regulatory authority, mandatory approval for class A, B, and C, and D. Okay. Quality management system certification is important, mandatory. Clinical investigations as per Helsinki Declaration. They have a complete step documentation, okay. Common submission dossier, all of them exactly similar to Indian regulation. Okay. What are the strategies for strengthening the regulatory framework? Please, capacity building. Okay. Training for regulatory personnel. There are organizations in India which are doing training of the regulatory personnel. FICCI is doing it. CIA and CDSCO come up with certain programs. IGMPI, they're all, probably I can share this with you. They're all, I don't have much time. So, this IGMPI, there is a training program there, wired training, They're all very good training programs are there for regulations, medical device regulations. Developing expertise in emerging technologies. MIT startup hub started by the government of India, okay, providing a lot of incentives and framework for startup organizations, particularly for the emerging technologies. Okay. Investing in regulatory infrastructure, that's a very important thing. Close about before we started the regulation in India, there have not been many laboratories in India, mainly private laboratories, very expensive to do all the product testing. Okay. Now, in the last 3 years, there are about 10 laboratories have been started in India by the government of India. Okay. And certification bodies and notified bodies are there. They have been qualified. Some of them are Indian organizations, many of them are foreign organizations, like TIFSOD, SGS, TUV, Rhineland, UL. These are all the organizations which does certification, which will come and do an audit for 13485 and regulation, and then give you the approvals. Okay. Developing startup ecosystem, Startup India by the government of India is a fantastic program that is there. A lot of organizations have benefited out of it. One very important aspect is standards adoption and localization, harmonization of standards that need to be done across all the countries for harmonization of all the standards. There are close to about 300 different standards and many more getting developed. Okay. And also the local organization needs to develop local standards based on the international standards in alignment with that country's requirements. One of the fantastic that has been introduced by Government of India is there is an organization in India called the BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards. Okay. They have a methodology by which you can buy standards, international standards, at a very, very low cost. If you want to buy ISO 13485 from ISO website, it will cost you 23,000 rupees. If you buy from BIS, it will cost you 900 rupees. And only Indians from the Indian, IP has to be an Indian IP. Okay. It's not allowed for foreigners to purchase. It's only for Indians. You can buy it for 900 rupees. Similarly, IEC 62601, which is a common standard for all medical devices which are operating in electronics. This thing, IEC 62601, the cost of it is 43,000 rupees from IEC website. You can get it for 1,300 rupees in India. So very good initiatives have been taken by the government of India. And digitization of the regulatory process. The whole application, everything is purely digital now. CDSCO has got a portal. Okay. Singapore has got a portal. You apply only online. You don't have to go to the office, you don't have to stand in the queue, nothing. No documentation. Everything has to be done only through online. Okay. Unique device identification. In India, we have GS1. GS1 gives the unique device identification, the barcode. For every device, you need to put a barcode. It has to be there on the product. Even if it's a software product, you need to put it. For every manufactured product, the manufactured serial number has to be there in the barcode. So for every product that is manufactured, you need to have a barcode. You need to buy that barcode from GS1, which is internationally accepted for us. Okay. Then harmonization and collaboration needs to be there. There need to be a promotion of local manufacturing. Okay. Indian government is doing a very fantastic job in terms of promoting local manufacturing through the Make in India scheme, particularly for medical device schemes are available. You can go ahead and apply and get that. Okay. There has to be a private-public partnerships and patient engagement. These are my take on the strategies for strengthening the regulatory framework already that is there in India. Okay. Future trends, okay. Digital health, AI, ML devices, okay. Regulations, adaptation of software of the medical device. Already there, IMDRF has come out with, particularly for quality management system, they have come out with SAMD structure, agile regulatory approaches, okay, is being developed by IMDRF. Okay. Data piracy, privacy, and cybersecurity. We need to really very clearly understand the bias in AI algorithms. Okay, that is there. So these are all the challenges and future trends and opportunities that are going to be there in regulatory front. Personalized medicines, wearable devices, at-home diagnostic devices, they have to be controlled in a particular fashion. There need to be a development and regulatory framework, modification, adaptation, etc. Sustainability and ESG. And it has to be an increased focus on real world evidence of data. Based on real world evidence of data, the regulatory framework has to evolve. Okay. In conclusion, I would like to put this on. Regulations are mandatory for patient safety. It's not a black box. It is not a thing that you need to be afraid of. It is mandatory. As a human being, we need to respect every other human being. That's what we are here for, to increase and strengthen the patient, the health of the patient and the public health. That's a primary focus. Regulation allows, gains you to achieve them. It is not an impediment. It allows you, gains you, and gives you the power how you will go ahead and achieve that goal. You need to have customer focus. Okay. Quality, efficiency, and efficacy are the primary importance for that need to be there for the product. And there has to be a business feasibility. Okay, all this, okay, the business feasibility is not there, so it is not possible. You can't sell a product you cannot survive. Okay, so there has to be trust and integrity. The regulatory authority needs to have a very good plan and can perform, and the organization needs to have collaborate and comply. Very clear. Thank you. Questions, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sriram, for this excellent presentation. I think you've given us a very wide overview, but I know there's a lot of depth to it, and we understand that the time given is just about an hour, but really it's an eye-opener for all of us, some of us being here, and especially for our guests who come from overseas. We've opened out this really process of what regulations look like, not only in India, but also in MeDStrategist. Questions open now, so those who have questions, go ahead.
Thanks so much for this is really specific. A sense of to get something simple. I know that I'm sure it's the range is huge. I'm sure sense.
Okay, sure. The regulatory costs of can be in two levels. One is the organization to design and understand the regulation and quality management system, and then make the product adaptable to that particular regulation. So you need to have good consultant who will be able to help you out. So there is a consultancy cost. It could be anywhere in the, because the whole life cycle of development of the product from concept to, for you to get the, go to the market, it will vary from anywhere from 12 months to 24 months or something. So depending upon the timeline, the cost would vary from say 5 lakhs. I'm sorry, I'm in India and I'll be talking in rupees. So 5 lakhs to maybe about 15, 20 lakhs. 15 lakhs, depending upon how long we need to engage with them. Okay. Then the second portion is the product meeting the requirements. You need to do testing. It's standards testing. Depending upon the product, whether the class A, class B, class C, class D, and type of thing, how many standards are there, it could cost you anywhere between 5 lakhs to 40 lakhs.
And that's for testing.
Actual testing of the product. So that's what it is. Apart from that, there's one more cost, which is the cost that we need to pay to the quality management system certification, the audit fees and certification. That could cost anywhere between 2 to 3 lakhs or so. And for CDSCO, the cost is very less. I think it's about 5,000 rupees. Very, very less.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. It was very insightful. I have 3 questions. The first one is if we classify, so we are AI software as a medical device, and our understanding was that a lot of the CMDs in class B like Fleur.ai, where they consider themselves as a decision support system. So when you tell that your diagnostic solution that gives you immediate report as a point of care solution, we are at a higher classification. So we went ahead and registered for a class C test license. And the question is probably in the West, the classification might be different. So you mentioned the class C is equivalent to class 3, probably in the US. So is the classification terminologies exactly matching? Because here, for some understanding, because we are a screening device. So usually we get the questions when we talk international is why are you your screening device? Why did you go for a class C device? And that seems to be a confusing part. That's the first question. Second question, you talked about if you get an FDA approval, how to get your solution into LMICs. But if you get a CDSCO manufacturing license, which are the countries that we can import the solution into? So if you could touch upon that. And the third question is, usually startups, healthcare startups in India are incubated in some incubator. So the website in itself for a software as a medical device, it's not very friendly, right? So you say for manufacturing license, this is the area that we need to have, and a lot of questions are coming back. Is there a provision for 13485 and manufacturing license that kind of supports software as a medical device? Is that or we should buy that facility even though we are working remotely?
Yeah. Coming to the first question, which is on the classification. I mentioned the class C will be equivalent to class 2B of Europe. I did not mention class 3 of US. It depends. Because the US has got only class 1, class 2, class 3. Depending upon this thing, it could probably come under class 2 or class 3 of US. I'm not sure. We need to go into the details of that. So that is the thing. And probably you are right in defining that it's a class C in India. Okay. For each regulation, there is a separate rules that each of the regulations are given. You need to go by those rules for classification under those regulations. You cannot directly compare it with each of them. I just gave a benchmark in terms of how it is. So that's what it is. The second question was into the
CDSCO, you get the CDSCO manufacturing license.
Yeah.
That which other countries could be
Yeah.
potentially?
So CDSCO manufacturing license will not be accepted by any other country other than India, because that's how the harmonization works. That's how it has been. Unlike the US, Europe, Japan, Australia, Canada and Brazil, which is acceptable by most of the countries. In India, and this thing is not acceptable by others. But if you go, you can, if you have obtained the manufacturing license in India, it's only a question of money, okay, for you to go ahead and get the CE marking, European regulation, because you would have met all of them very, all the documentation would have been very similar, and you need to submit and get the approval for CE marking. If you get CE marking, then you can practically go to any country in the world. Except US.
And the third question is on the, if you are part of an incubator and you're a software as a
Yeah. Absolutely fine. You can go ahead and give your manufacturing address of the incubator address itself. So, but there will be few things, even though you are actually not manufacturing, every depends upon the product, every patient. Is it going to be a separate, customized or configured application that we're going to give? Based on that, you need to have certain infrastructure in place. The infrastructure control has to be in a particular location. So that location will be the address of the manufacturer. It can be your incubation center. That's not an issue at all. It can be there, but it will be there will be as a manufacturer address. That will be the address that will go out with the product. You need to be prepared with that. Later on, if you change it, you need to change the apply for manufacturing license, enhancement, and then get it for a different address.
I have one question about, with medical devices, there is also a generation of a lot of plastic waste as well as e-waste. Are there any regulations to that? Since is India probably aware of because let's say it's a lab on a chip kind of device. They're generating a lot of the e-waste. So the chips never discarded. So is there any regulations to this?
Yes, absolutely. Within the medical device, this thing, one of the aspects is disposition of the product. So you need to define how the product has to be disposed of. And in India, we have a rule, the e-waste rule, 2016 e-waste rule. You need to follow that. And that will be part of your procedure that we need to do, right? And they need to give that instruction to the user. It has to be there in the IFU, information per user. Okay, that you need to give how the product has to be disposed of, methodology, even identification. There are agents who will take that and then dispose it properly. You need to have an agreement with those agents. Whenever you supply, they will go ahead and pick it up on that data. That has to be identified and communicated to whom you're going to sell that product in the IFU documentation. Yes, they covered. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sriram. If there are no other questions, we will close this session.
Thank you, Dr. Sriram. Can we have a round of applause for Mr. Sriram? I request Dr. Tony to felicitate Mr. Sriram.